Okay.
You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show, streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, 8 to 10 a.m. Wednesday through Sunday. You can see us on our Facebook shows on Mac and Mac Sports and Northeast Streaming Sports Network, with our platforms also on Twitter and Instagram. Like, follow, comment, share, subscribe when possible. Check out the website at macandjacksports.com, called Max Insiders, for information on weekly guests, articles, team, public relations updates, a list of shows that are on Northeast Streaming Sports, our great sponsors with links to their products and services. I'm Mac with your co-host, the legendary Jack Hirsch, boxing writer and former president of the Boxing Writers Association of America, bringing you national sports with special focus on Northeast professional sports from New York, Boston, and Philly. Good morning, Jack. How are you doing?
Good morning, Mac. I hope you got a good night's sleep because a lot of football today, a lot of big games, and today is the last day of the regular season for the NFL, meaning we're not going to get a full NFL schedule until next September.
I agree.
Because the playoffs begin next week.
Yeah. I mean, I guess our coverage will be more in depth in the playoffs than we have been doing as we've been just doing our NFL Sunday preview. Today's show, Jack, we have Anthony Cervino, the fantasy football expert from Fantasy Football Face-Off, will be joining us, and Robert Butler, our weekly guest from Sports Scope, who will come in and give us a little commentary and his thoughts on the NFL and sports in general. So, Jack, let's get to the sports updates. And there was quite a bit of sports yesterday, and we'll touch on all of them, including some of the football updates. Hall of Fame running back Floyd Littlejack passed away. He played for the Denver Broncos, 5-time Pro Bowler, led the AFL in combined yards in 1967 and 1968, and he was from Connecticut, Jack. He played for Syracuse College.
What a great forgotten name of the past. And along with the great Jim Brown, they were iconic in Syracuse football. And Floyd Little was on a par with Jim Brown as far as being a great college player. And he was a great running back for the Denver Broncos, played 9 years for them, and one of the best players in Denver Bronco history.
Very true. Very true. He could catch the ball out of the backfield as well as run with the football. And that's back in the old AFL days, Jack, where he was at his best. We had some boxing yesterday, Jack. Exciting boxing match. Garcia KO's Campbell in the end of the seventh. And I know you being the boxing writer you still are, I imagine you were watching that.
Absolutely. For Ryan Garcia, it was his coming out party. Now, with social media, Ryan Garcia has a ton of followers, okay? Yeah. But this was the fight that proved he was more substance than hype. He took on a very tough Luke Campbell, who came up a little short in 2 prior world title fights. And Campbell's a former Olympic gold medalist as well. He gave it his all. He knocked down Ryan Garcia very heavily in the second round with a left hook. Garcia was hurt, got up, took over, and then eventually stopped Campbell in the 7th round of a terrific fight. And it's Ryan Garcia's coming out party. and we could talk about him fighting the elite fighters on the world scene, like Gervonta Davis, who he called out, maybe Vasily Lomachenko, Teofimo Lopez, Devon Haney, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I mean, it's great to see boxing and good matches again, Jack. And I hope the different boxing associations keep providing us with some great matches, and not
the associations prevent us from seeing great matches because you have opposing champions of that particular sanctioning bodies who have an excuse not to fight one another a lot of the time because they could defend the title within the sanctioning body group. But with that said, you're right, Mac. It was a great fight yesterday, and your idea is spot on. We want to see the best fight the best. I totally agree with you there.
In a little quick baseball update, the Dodgers get pitcher Garrett Clevenger in a three-way deal from between Tampa, the Phillies, and the Dodgers. The Phillies get left-hander Jose Alvarado. He made 2 scoreless appearances over 1 2-3 innings. A young guy. Maybe that helps the Phillies out, Jack.
Well, I'll tell you, in Major League Baseball, we're waiting for the big explosion to happen with the available free agents like DJ LeMayo, big interest here locally, of course, Trevor Bauer. Right. And we're waiting, for something really big to go down. But that's basically setting the table. But you're right in this sense, Mac. The little moves might ultimately determine who goes to the playoffs, who wins the World Series. And to think the other day, I mean, what the San Diego Padres did. First, they get Blake Snell and then Darvish, 2 aces to add to their staff. And they weren't that far away as it is. So I'm kind of curious who the odds makers are going to favor to win the National League pennant, the defending champion Los Angeles Dodgers or the San Diego Padres.
Great point, Jack. They had a very exciting young team last year, a lot of offense, and this just makes them stronger. In college bowl games, Jack, in the Orange Bowl, Texas A&M beats the University of North Carolina, and University of Kentucky beats North Carolina State. So both North Carolina teams lost in their bowl games. Mississippi State also had a big win.
You said the University of Kentucky won, right?
Yes.
That's a big deal for them because I thought you were going to talk about basketball, where that once glorious program that used to be, near the top, if not at the top all the time, they had lost 6 games in a row, their basketball team. So finally, John Calipari got them a win there. So let's see whether they keep it going.
In local basketball, real quick, the Knicks beat the Pacers 106-102. The 76ers beat the Hornets 127-112. And in the Atlantic Division right now, Jack, you have Philadelphia 5-1, Brooklyn, the Knicks, and the Celtics are all tied at 3-3. So
watching the young players, I'm really studying them out. I like what I see. But they can only go so far with all this young talent. The young talent could gel eventually. Then they got to get that one marquee player like a Damian Lillard type to really get them going, to make them a legitimate contender, at least take them in, a step closer into the playoffs if they can get there, at least win a round and be a little bit of a factor. But you see R.J. Barrett, 25 points last night. But the problem is he's very good one night, then not so good the next night. He's a bit inconsistent. Then you see Julius Randle. He's not the type of player you're going to go that far with, but he'd be a nice piece on a good team, which the Knicks really aren't there. But I really like Austin Rivers, the way he's coming off the bench and hustling. And I like his attitude. He could have gone to a contender. He said he had other offers, but he wants to be part of a building block, a program that goes from the bottom to the top, and I like that attitude in the player.
Me too, Jack. Me too. I mean, it goes to show that there are still some people that play the game that want to be contributors and want to play basketball instead of just being part of the ride to a playoff team. Let's talk about the 76ers a little bit more. I mean, Doc Rivers goes there. They're 5-1 right now, but they're winning at home as they always do, Jack. Their home record is unbelievable over the past couple of seasons. It's the away that really is where they lose ground and they lose their edge. Simmons played great. Philadelphia looks like they're working as a team, and Doc Rivers wanted to get Simmons really going this year, and I think he's a coach that could do that. What do you think about Philadelphia? I mean, I know very early right now, the new coach, trying to work Embiid and Simmons together, getting a little bit of spacing on the floor so they both can play at the same time, and then thinking about going small with Simmons at center. Do you think that Doc Rivers is the man for the job over there to get them over the hump?
Well, certainly after the years of Brett Brown, I mean, it's a good move. One thing about Doc Rivers, he has a calming effect on the team. He doesn't panic, and he's Coach Bev. I mean, he was highly successful with the Boston Celtics, the Orlando Magic, not so much with the LA Clippers, despite the perception that he may have been. He really wasn't in all the years he was there. He could never get that team to the finals. And there was a lot of talent there with Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, and then last year, of course, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. And the coach has to have some accountability if he can't take a team to the next step. But with that said, him trying to get Simmons and Embiid playing together, I question whether that's going to work. I think Ben Simmons can't be held back, and he's been held back so far because I think he's a phenomenal talent. People forget not that long ago, Ben Simmons was basically put on a par with Anthony Davis. There was a debate who was better. There's no debate right now. Yeah. I mean, you speak to 20 people, all 20 are going to tell you Anthony Davis is better. And Ben Simmons, I think, playing next to Embiid, it slows Ben Simmons down because I think he's more versatile. He's a little quicker. I think he can run the court better. And we'll see whether the Sixers might be better served pulling off a massive trade for Embiid to some contender who feels they have to change their chemistry.
It's a relevant point, Jack, but I know even when they had Showtime with the Lakers way back when, Kareem wasn't the fastest guy on the court, but they had great spacing where you could go down low to Kareem if you had to, but you had Worthy and you had the other forwards and guards running the floor, and Kareem was normally behind following up with rebounds and stuff. So I think it has a lot to do with spacing too. I agree that when Embiid's in, they feed him and kind of turn away from Simmons. Maybe Doc can make that work.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was arguably the most versatile big man in history.
Good point.
I mean, people are fooled by his height. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was a great dribbler. You'd see him bring the ball all the way down the court and dribble. It was unheard of. I mean, can you imagine Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell? Even though I'm sure Wilt could have dribbled to a large extent. But Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was so good. I bet had they decided 1 year just for kicks to turn him into a guard, he would have had good ball handling skills as a guard. I don't know about his jump shot, but he was such a good athlete. I bet that wouldn't have even been bad. I believe he would have been a decent guard. I know it's crazy to talk that way in a sense. Listen, it's the same thing as me saying to you, Mac, Roberto Clemente had a gun for an arm. Could you imagine they taught him the mechanics of pitching?
Yeah.
Outfielders like that. He would have had a heck of a fastball. It's just smoothing him out. But with that said, I think Embiid and Simmons isn't the greatest mix together. Can they win with them? To a point. I mean, can they go deep into the Eastern Conference playoffs? Of course. I mean, because the Sixers, Bucks, Celtics, and Nets basically are grouped together. You have to give the Nets a little edge based on potential, but the injury to Dinwiddie might hurt a little more than people realize.
Very true. So let's go to football finally, Jack. Tony Romo will miss today's broadcast due to COVID protocol. Now, I don't know if he has it or if he was in close contact with someone who had it. But you won't be hearing Romo color commentating as you do normally every Sunday.
I don't understand the laws. I'm all for being careful. It's very important. But what happens if someone goes into a supermarket and they find out they had COVID? Are they supposed to shut the supermarket down
Good
for the
point.
next 10 days because some of the workers may have passed by that person in the supermarket or anyone who was in the supermarket during that time. Are they supposed to quarantine? I don't completely get it. I mean, I know we have to be careful. We have to take serious precautions. And when I see people who don't wear their mask, I mean, they're not only stupid, but they're inconsiderate as well. You know, if
Right,
I think they go in a public place, I'm talking
right,
about.
right, right, right.
But,
Yeah,
you
you
know,
don't have
when
to
it
take a
gets to the point, yeah,
yeah, you don't have to take a shower with your mask on, Jack. As what you're saying.
in a public place,
Yes, yes.
yeah.
And I'll even take that. Well, I'll tell you about the rules of a restaurant, Jack. Right? If they find out that somebody in the kitchen has a COVID, they immediately shut it down and they're closed. And that's the way it is with a restaurant. Grocery store is not like that. I know it's not like that. You couldn't do that. So it's a point well taken. Now, the Dallas Cowboys have agreed to extension with Kellen Moore, their offensive coordinator. They signed him to a 3-year contract. He was thinking about going back to his alma mater to be a coach there at Boise State. There was a big, I don't want to say controversy, but there was a thing at the end of our offensive coordinators, Garrett's time there as a head coach, where the owner came down and said, guess what? You're not calling the plays anymore. Kellen Moore is. And so I knew then that, Garrett was out. It was leaving. I knew he wasn't going to last too much longer there. But I guess the owner really likes this young kid, Jack.
Jerry Jones has done it again. He's one of your favorite owners in sports, right? Well,
Right.
he saw he had an offensive coordinator in Kellen Moore, who the Cowboys ranked very highly statistically last year on the Kellen Moore's play calling. And this year he had to be creative with Zach Prescott going out, and he's got the offense moving. I don't think he made the move last year with the intention of firing Jason Garrett because the Joneses, the whole Jones family, they always liked Jason Garrett a lot, and they stuck with him a lot of years, let's be
Yeah.
honest. I think that gave him a reason to keep Jason Garrett on as the coach. If the Cowboys would have won, Jason Garrett would have stayed on as the coach, and of course, Kellen Moore would have continued the play calling.
Right.
But but I kind of wonder, does it get to the point ever where you have an established coach, a great coach like a Bill Belichick, and Robert Kraft decides he's going to bring someone else in to call plays, a defensive coordinator. I don't think he'd do that to Belichick, but maybe an offensive coordinator. But he has Josh McDaniels for that. But in some way, shape, or form, I think a veteran coach who can get a job elsewhere very easily wouldn't put up with that.
Right.
He
Yeah.
can be independent. He has the power. I think someone who has a difficult time getting another head coaching job, they have to accept whatever's thrown their way.
Agreed. I mean, you look at Andy Reid, they talk about his offensive coordinator over there at, Kansas City.
The enemy.
But you know that Andy Reid is running that. I mean, he's given a little power to Bellamy, but Bellamy.
Yeah.
But
could I tell you, Mac,
Go
the
ahead.
enemy, he was supposed to be the hottest prospect for head coaching job, but owners don't like to hire someone supposedly an offensive coordinator who doesn't call the plays directly all the time.
Right.
And
Right.
the enemy also, I heard, interviewed very poorly. He
Yeah.
might be a nice guy, but he wasn't impressive during the interviews.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and a lot of people, made an issue out of the color about that, which I really don't. I want to be honest with you, Jack. If I was the owner of a team or the GM of a team, I wouldn't care if the guy can call plays and he has a scheme and he's great. I'm hiring the best candidate. It has nothing to do with the old boy network at all. I feel anyway. I mean, I can't imagine anybody in business and football. Let's face it, is a business. That wouldn't hire the best guy for the job. It wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, Bieniemy was very highly touted, as you said, didn't get a job. I would imagine he would be in the top 3 in line this year again. Maybe he goes to the Jets.
But if someone interviews poorly, Mac,
right.
the enemy will sit down, have an interview, and you're not impressed with the guy. You have to feel very comfortable with the guy. You have to feel a bond with the guy because you're going to be with him all the time. And if he seems to be indifferent, okay,
Right.
like we've had guests on this show, for example, a lot of guests. And let's say you had to be with someone full time outside of me. Let's just make believe. Now, you'll never get anyone as good as me, but that's another issue. But let's say you had to get someone else. You have to have that comfort factor to a
Right.
certain extent.
Right.
And if someone's going to sit there and they're going to be too serious or they're going to joke around too much, you have to have kind of like that perfect, balance.
Yeah, and at least
Yeah.
you say it correctly, Jack. You got to feel comfortable. I mean, not only that the guy got to know what he's talking about, but you're giving him the keys to the car, right? So, I mean, if I'm giving you the keys to the car, I want to make sure that you're not going crazy in my car, and you're representing the team not only on the field but in the public. So, yeah, I would agree with you to a point that it's good to be comfortable with the guy, but he's also, you see owners hiring some coaches that should never be hired just because they're comfortable with them. And that is going to the other extreme too. So the enemy maybe goes to the Jets. Offensive coordinators, and this is not a knock against them, but it seems, take Andy Reid out of the equation. That defensive coordinators and special team coaches are normally the most successful. And I don't understand totally why that is. I mean, maybe because they're turned into coaches today that are supposed to be quarterback gurus, and this is where they make their mistakes. Adam Gase, our tight end coach, I'm trying to remember his name for Cleveland last year. I was head coach of Cleveland. Anyway, the former head coach of Cleveland, he got along with Baker Mayfield, so we're gonna
Freddie Kitchens.
Yeah, we're gonna make him the coach because him and Bakerfield have such a good rapport. Offensive coordinators, Jack, are a little different than most because they are like artists, crazy artists that come up with all these plays and all these gadget things because it's limitless. On defense, you can only do so many different coverages. You can only have so many different reads. But on offense, you can go to town. I mean, you could do double reverse passes with a half twist if you want. And in my experience, when I had an offensive coordinator, I used to have to tell him, hey, listen, man, keep it basic. We'll build them trick plays later. But they come and they want to run a triple option, at the high school level. And I'm saying, listen. Slow the roll. Let's get the basics down first. Let's execute the plays. Then after that, we'll start rolling with that. So these guys are really, I don't want to say pie in the sky. They're really a little nutty when it comes to football. I mean, that's what makes them good. And that can make them bad too, Jack.
And and if you're a coordinator, you have to massage the ego of the head coach. You have to, communicate with the head coach a lot, make him feel he's in charge and he's giving his consent for you to run the defense, the offense, the way you want to do it too. Because if you get a coordinator, he's just doing into his own thing and is hardly communicating with the head coach, just goes over things in a business-like fashion with them. It doesn't make for a good relationship. They're not on the same page. And I got the feeling there wasn't a good relationship this year with Adam Gase and Greg Williams.
Agree.
And I was a little surprised that Adam Gase fired Greg Williams, that he had that power. I get the feeling he didn't really have the power, but he was told he did because it was okay with the Jet front office, with the GM Joe Douglas, because they knew they were going to get rid of Adam Gase too, probably at the end of the year. But from what I hear with the Jets, Mac, Eric Bieniemy isn't on their radar. They're going to be, searching the college ranks.
Really? Okay. Well, maybe you get Urban Meyer. That would be exciting. To follow up on what you just said about relationships between coaches, and we've seen it work and we've seen it not work. A lot of times we saw a bad relationship between, Buddy Ryan and Mike Ditka. It worked.
Awful relationship.
I think Mike Ditka just had so much will that he was going to do what he was going to run a team. But Buddy Ryan always seemed to be kind of stabbing him in the back and kind of looking to get the spotlight on him more. And then you see, where the special teams coach ended up calling a play for Detroit.
The Lions. Yeah, I mean that guy. I don't like firing coaches so easily.
Sure.
I like to give them an opportunity, work with them to an extent, but to never special teams coach he decides to run a fake punt on his own when the head coach has no idea.
Yeah, that was great.
Come on, I would never hire a guy like that. I mean, listen, I shouldn't say never. Let him go back to college, become a Division III special teams coach, and work his way up the ranks again, and ask for forgiveness, and then maybe 10 years later, I'll give him a look. I mean,
I hear you. So all the Saints running backs will be out for today's game, Jack. Now, you remember when Denver, they ended up putting a wide receiver at quarterback, but all the Saints, because of close contact with Kamara, they will have no running backs normal running backs will be playing today's game. I don't know how that's going to affect today's game, Jack. I mean, I don't know if they consider their backup quarterback a running back or not. He can run with the ball, so maybe he plays. Maybe you throw Jameson Winston in there as a fullback and have at it. Well, I don't know.
Well, unless the Packers lost to the Bears, Saints would have to win, Packers lose to the Bears for the Saints to get home field advantage. So Carolina might be primed. They're at home against the Saints for an upset. Alvin Kamara last week, 6 touchdowns, so he has that great hangover. But like you say, he's not playing. The other running backs aren't playing. And I kind of wonder whether you can get away with it, just patching up your backfield with running backs as long as your wide receivers, tight end, and quarterback are in place. You can actually maybe get away with it a little more to an extent. You just run a package of plays to your substitute backs where you dump off short passes to them or work on certain pitch outs wide. I don't know. You'd know a little more about it.
I don't know. It's confusing to me because, I mean, the running backs, of course, they have the running back room and they stick together. They kind of hang out together like all groups do in football. They have their own little units. But it's interesting.
Play, Mac? Well, I meant to ask you this. One play in football is extinct. It used to be a great play. The draw play. We don't really see it anymore where the back would be, far behind the quarterback. When I say far, 5-6 yards or whatever. Quarterback would fade back, to pass, not take the ball out of the shotgun. And the defense would know, and he'd surprise him sometimes, it would be 3rd and long, and hand it off on a draw play, and things would open up because the edge rushers would be coming in from the side.
Right.
And you don't see that anymore, the draw play.
Yeah, I've seen it, Jack. Normally, like when when they know it's a passing situation, maybe deep in your own territory, and it's 3rd and 20, and they try to give that little slip draw where the quarterback even takes in a shotgun and slips it to the running back. But they don't run it like they used to. I agree with that.
Not like the way they used to.
Right, I agree with that. So it's going to be interesting, I think. Like I said, I would imagine that the backup quarterback who played quarterback pretty well while Drew Brees was out might be one of the featured running backs if he's not considered a running back. So we'll see what happens. I mean, if they put Drew Brees just back in a spread formation, they're going to get him killed. And
I'll tell you, I'd be concerned if I were the Saints going into the playoffs. Drew Brees wasn't sharp last week. He's played 2 weeks since coming back from an injury. The first week back, he was dreadful, awful. Last week, he wasn't as bad, but he wasn't good. Okay, right. At best, he was close to average at best. And going forward to the playoffs, there's some good teams in the NFC, and you have to kind of wonder, is Drew Brees truly at the end of the line? The feeling is he's going to retire at the end of this year. This is it. But you have to wonder whether his skills have truly diminished at this point.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't look the same. He's got broken ribs, Jack, too. That's
right. Obviously, that's always a factor.
Sure. So in a puzzling move to me, Jack, Michigan wants to sign Jim Harbaugh to an extension. Now, we've talked about this before on the show a few times. Jim Harbaugh goes back to his alma mater. He brings the 49ers to the Super Bowl. He's pretty successful in the NFL. He goes to Michigan, and Michigan feels, well, great. We have a former Super Bowl head coach. We're going to get a great recruiting. Here comes Michigan. We're back in the spotlight again. And it's kind of gone just the opposite, Jack, where they faded into almost nothing, where they can't even have a winning record, and Ohio State trounces them every year. Michigan State's beating them. and they want to sign him to an extension. I don't get it.
Well, you know, their patience is commendable. Maybe they believe he's their guy in the long run, and they're going to stay the course. I once heard a coach say that you leave someone in a position long enough, eventually they're going to turn it around. Eventually they're going to win. That's if you have the patience. Take the Jets with Adam Gase, who's probably going to be let go after today. Let's say you left him in the next 10 years.
Right.
He's going to turn it around at some point, you would have to think. Okay? It's all a question of patience, but in college it's a little different because you're dealing with recruiting. Right. And you're not only the coach, you're the de facto GM as well. You got to go to the elite high school players' homes, and you've got to recruit them, and you've got to sell your school. And the Michigan tradition, while it's very good, it's outstanding, it's losing a lot of ground to, you know, other schools like Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and on and on and on. Okay?
Yeah,
so
yeah. I mean, I don't know, Jack. I don't know what their thought process is. I think Harbaugh's had enough time to turn that around, and I don't know if Harbaugh is the right coach for Michigan or not, and not if Michigan wants to go and be one of the top 4, top 6 teams.
Let me tell you another thing, Mac. Too, is rich alumni, wealthy alumni. You need the money to keep coming in. Right. And if they're not going to beat Ohio State, and I'm an alumni, and I live for that, I'm not going to want to write a big fat check.
I agree. Jack, backstage right now, we have our fantasy football expert, a great football analyst also, Anthony Cervino from Fantasy Football Face-Off. Great site. When you're done here with the show, go check it out. He has a great show over there, and we'll bring him up right now. How you doing today, Anthony?
Good morning.
I'm doing
Anthony.
Great, guys. What's going on?
Happy New Year.
No, Anthony, I'll get your opinion on this. I'll get your opinion on this. We were just talking about, about Harbaugh in Michigan. They want him to sign an extension, and bringing Harbaugh in. The original reason was because he's a former NFL Super Bowl coach. Even though he didn't win it, he did a great job with the 49ers. They figured recruiting was going to be through the roof. They were going to bring all these new recruits from major the major high school players across the country to go and be with a Super Bowl NFL coach. And it seems to have worked just the opposite, where you see they've been getting worse over the years. And what are your thoughts about that? About actually Michigan wanting to sign him to an extension?
I was a little shocked by that because they haven't really won anything under Harbaugh, right?
Right. I mean, they've lost to Ohio State. They're losing to Michigan State now, and they're even coming up with losing records. And either he's really the athletic director or the person, the superintendent, whatever you want to call it, that runs the university, the dean, must either really like him to even to offer him that. Because, I mean, do you want Michigan to be another to keep going through this, or do you want him to be a powerhouse again?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I know he has the ties, obviously, to Michigan, so that's the only thing I could think of. But again, if they're not winning, then that program isn't doing what it needs to do.
I just thought of something else. Maybe Jim Harbaugh is planning on they're going to fire him anyway, but it would hurt his chances of getting an NFL job. It'll look better if he resigns. So they're going to say they want to sign him to an extension. They're interested in it. And then Jim Harbaugh resigns and looks, towards the NFL. I mean, there's always that small possibility. That's how it's playing out.
Yeah, I could see Harbaugh back in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, he seems to do well when he doesn't have to recruit the players. Maybe it just has to do with personality or
well, getting off that, Anthony, what's your favorite game today? What's the game that you're most looking forward to?
I would say the most interesting one, because there's 5 AFC teams at 10-5, and then there's 4 playoff spots available. 4 of those 5 teams should have no problem winning. The one that I see could be an issue is the Titans going up against Deshaun Watson and the Texans.
Yeah,
I said the same thing.
Sneaky game.
So Anthony, before we get in those big 3 games with you, and I want to go through, because there's a lot of information. There's a lot of chances that some of the teams that are in the playoffs because of COVID and injuries, might not win this week. So let's get to your best plays first. Your quarterback, running backs, and wide receivers. Anthony.
Fantasy this week. There's so many players not playing. There could be players playing a couple of snaps or a half and then leaving. There's a lot of backups. So in week 17, I like focusing on the games that mean something. I like all of the players in the Houston, Tennessee game. You have two really good quarterbacks that can work, Deshaun Watson, Ryan Tannehill. David Johnson's been hot the past 2 games, meaningless games, but David Johnson's playing his best football of the year, Derrick Henry. So I would look at teams in that game, players in that game. Also in this Cowboys game, that offense has come alive. You can look at Andy Dalton as a cheaper option at quarterback, and then all of those Cowboys wide receivers are all hot right now.
Yeah, definitely. And I think maybe even a couple of the Giants players, maybe even an Ingram or maybe a Shepard might be a pretty good play for the Giants too. If you want to, if you like the Giants and you want to go and pick something like that. So let's get to the 3 top games I think that are going to be playing. I want to start with Green Bay and Chicago. First seed is on the line for Green Bay. Whether or not Chicago gets in the playoffs, they may not get in if they don't win. If they win, they're in, if I'm correct, Anthony. So Trubisky looks pretty good. The running game looks pretty good for Chicago, which is one of Green Bay's weaknesses. And, of course, Aaron Rodgers is playing out of his mind this year.
Yeah, the Packers need to win this game, too. It's not just the Bears. And if this was a throwaway for Green Bay, I would give the Bears a shot. But with the way Green Bay is playing, I see them taking care of business. But that doesn't mean that Chicago is out of it. I'm trying to pull up the scenario now. If Chicago wins, they're in. But if they lose, they're going to need some help. But I'm going to try to find what kind of help they need right now.
Yeah, that would probably have to come down between Arizona and the Rams, I would imagine. One of those.
Well, if Arizona wins, then they're in.
Yeah, so if Chicago win and they're in, and Arizona loss and they're in.
Right. So that would have to be. What do you think about Trubisky's performance lately? I know they haven't been going up against the strongest teams in the league, but, I mean, it looks like that maybe Chicago holding on to Trubisky. He's coming up on his contract. And they, of course, they've got Foles with that big contract behind him. What do you think Chicago does with him? Do they sign him? Do they give him a franchise? Or do they just say, see you later?
It all depends on if they're going to retain Nagy and Ryan Pace, because Trubisky's tied to Ryan Pace more than anybody. And of all the bad we've seen out of Mitchell Trubisky, he has I think he only has 1 losing season.
Right.
He wins games. He wins ugly games, but he's winning games. So that's a tough spot to be in. It's almost like what's going on in Cleveland and Baker Mayfield. Baker looks really good or really bad.
Right.
Well,
what do you do? They're winning. But if he doesn't look good winning.
And that making that change may make them a losing team. So I mean,
they franchise him, guys. It's only
Nick Foles
1
didn't
more
work.
year.
Right.
It's only 1 more year, so it's not like they're locked into him long. If they make the playoffs this year and Mitch Trubisky's the quarterback, it's logical to franchise him because you just tied in for 1 more year to him, and then you could buy some time to see how he does next year, whether you want to go forward with him as your long-term quarterback.
Definitely.
Yeah, I thought they were going to have to make that decision this year, but it's not going to be an easy one.
No, I mean, I don't know. Is Foles, I don't know if you know personally or not, Anthony, but is Foles there? Is his contract more than the next year or the next 2 years? I know they picked up that huge contract. And in his contract, I don't know if he has a no trade clause or not either. That would really hurt him.
I would doubt that a guy like Nick Foles has a no trade clause in the contract, but he's at least tied to Chicago in 2021 as a $4 million base salary, $2.66 million signing bonus. This is $6.66 million cap hit and about $14.3 million in dead money.
Wow.
So they're stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. But they have a potential out in 2022. So they kind of need to ride Nick Foles into this season.
Yeah, I agree with that. So we got Arizona and the Rams. Very interesting to me. No Goff, a quarterback that hasn't taken a snap in the NFL yet, going up against the Cardinals. They say that Murray might be hurt. I don't know. but they're going to have to depend on that Ram defense and maybe try to possess the ball with a good running game, and let that newer quarterback maybe have some safe throws. But the Cardinals got an explosive offense, Tony.
Yeah, well, both of these teams are a little bit banged up because for the Cardinals offense, they just placed Andy Isabella and Christian Kirk on the COVID list. So they're both out today. DeAndre Hopkins is healthy and play. Well, he's actually dealing with the hip injury. He's going to play. Larry Fitzgerald, I believe, is dealing with the groin. We don't know if Larry Fitzgerald is going to play. So that offense, that wide receiver is going to be a little bit shorthanded. The running back, Chase Edmonds, who catches the ball out of the backfield, we don't know if he's going to play. And then on the Rams side, they placed Cooper Kupp, one of the best slot receivers in the league. He's on the COVID list, and their top two running backs, or at least Darrell Henderson's out. Cam Akers might play, but this is a mess.
I mean,
Larry Fitzgerald, you mentioned, this could conceivably be his last game of a great career. And it would be sad if he was on the sideline. You'd at least want to see him get in, have a couple of catches. And we have no idea whether he's going to retire or not. But with DeAndre Hopkins coming to Arizona, basically we knew that would be, Larry Fitzgerald was going to be in the backup role.
Yeah, and Fitzgerald has always, even as he was aging, he never showed a sign of his age. He is now. Yeah. And we saw it last year, and we saw it big time this year.
Yeah.
Outside of mentoring, because that's a young offense. When they drafted Kyler last year, they drafted like 3 or 4 rookie receivers. So that they're very young, and I think Larry Fitzgerald's playing the mentor role. But now I think it's time to go, either go into coaching but he's a roster spot right now.
I agree with that. Both defenses. I mean, Arizona. I mean, I don't think they're a great defense. They're okay. They're a solid unit. But I think that if the Rams defense, Anthony, has to win this game, they have to stop Arizona no matter who's playing, and give themselves a shot to even kick field goals. You think it's going to be low scoring or high scoring, even with the injuries and stuff?
Listen, I like the under in this game.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be low scoring, and for the Rams' sake, I think it has to be low scoring. And this defense, they're going to be the ones that have to make plays.
John Wolford really is a good runner, so I could imagine them, he's going to run a lot and a lot of short passes. Who's going to back up John Wolford? Do you know, guys?
Bortles.
Blake Bortles.
Blake Bortles.
Right. How can I forget?
Yeah.
Why I don't understand this. Blake Bortles is an established NFL quarterback. Right. I mean, a lot more experience. So they're basically starting a guy in John Wolford who he hasn't played in an NFL game yet. Okay, and Blake Bortles has a ton of experience. Why didn't they just go with Blake Bortles?
I don't know if they trust Blake Bortles in a spot like this, because the last time Blake Bortles was in a spot like this, they were about a quarter away from the Super Bowl.
Jacksonville,
New England, yeah.
Very true. And I guess maybe the quarterback that hasn't taken a snap has been in the system and knows the plays maybe a little bit better than Blake Bortles.
They're saying that Wolford is going to have a short leash. So if it doesn't look good early, they're going to go to Bortles.
Yeah. So we have Cleveland and Pittsburgh, and it's become a lot more interesting, Anthony. I mean, you got Big Ben out. We don't know all the players that the Steelers will be resting. But Cleveland has I don't know how many players out with COVID. And I mean, for a playoff, these two teams being a playoff, especially for Cleveland to get in, they got to win this game. I know Pittsburgh wants to knock them out. Their defense will be coming, even though they have a couple defensive players out. I think Watt and the defensive tackle is going to be out. But I know they're going to be coming for Cleveland and Baker. And I don't know if Cleveland wins this by as many points as they're at least favored to win it by, but I think it's still going to be a close game.
Yeah, the last time I checked, I think the spread in this game was 10. Right. It jumped up from 9. It kept going up all week because Pittsburgh, they're resting their starters. They're resting everybody. And then on the other side, Cleveland, they're a little bit banged up, especially on defense. Mason Rudolph, I believe, last year was 1-1 against Baker Mayfield. This is not a lock for the Cleveland Browns. People think it is. It's not. And being on the other side, playing a little conspiracy theory, if I'm Pittsburgh, I want Cleveland in the playoffs. I would rather play a Cleveland team who we pretty much know we can beat 9 times out of 10 than the Colts or the Titans or the Dolphins. So to me, them resting their players because Pittsburgh can play their guys and they can jump up to the 2 seed. They're saying, you know what, we're not going to do that.
That's a good point. That's a
Maybe
really
they want Cleveland.
That's a good point.
J.J. Watt was named by his teammates as the most valuable player of the Steelers. Has he gotten to the caliber of his brother J.J. Watt, or very close at this point?
I'm not going to put him there because J.J. Watt, like the way that Aaron Donald's regarded as the best all-around player in the NFL, that was J.J. Watt years ago, and I don't think we see T.J. there yet. I'm not saying he can't get there, but J.J. Watt was a special player before he got all the injuries, and even now he's still a force on the field.
You know, Anthony, we wrote off. Well, I did anyway. I kind of wrote off the Ravens after, in the beginning of the season, and Jackson didn't look the same. It looked like they were trying to make him a pocket passer. The defense was banged up, and now, we've talked about teams beating Kansas City. I've at least mentioned the Bills, Cleveland when they're very healthy. You got a great running game that may be able to slow down Kansas City's chances. But the Ravens look a little scary right now. And if they same thing, they got a great running game. When Jackson moves around a little bit, he can work people open, and their defense is almost back to full strength. Are the Ravens maybe the team that can beat Kansas City this year?
Yes and no. Lamar Jackson has never beaten Patrick Mahomes. He's either 0-2 or 0-3 against him. It almost reminds me of Brady versus Peyton Manning for a while, because I know one had the edge on the other. I think Brady owned Manning for most of his career. But if Baltimore, they're getting hot at the right time. They're looking like their own selves in the final quarter of the season and not just in September and October anymore. And that works into their favor. I think the biggest thing they did, whether it was on purpose or not, was this offense really started taking off when they started deactivating Mark Ingram and starting lessening his touches instead of him getting 10 touches a game and taking it away from the rookie J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. Now those two are getting all the touches, and this offense is firing again.
I think Manning did win those playoff games against Brady's teams the last 3 times they played. But quarterbacks, to me, never go against one another. I think the quarterback goes against the defense and the opposing coach. That's the way I always look at it. There's one name that few people would have heard of. He's not a general name. Sam Koch, the punter and the holder for the Ravens. He's going to be missing his first game since 2006. And that's worth a mention because guys like that you just don't hear about. But their model of consistency to play that many years in a row and not miss a game is phenomenal.
Well, he's the punter too. So if he is the punter, that might be the only thing that would change that game around. Special teams plays a huge role, especially in playoff football and championship football.
Oh yeah,
so that's a great point. One other question for you. You talk about the Colts a lot. I know you like the Colts. I talk about Buffalo a lot. Rivers said this might be it for him for the end of the year. And here comes Josh Allen. Looks like he might be the next superstar in quarterbacks. So the Colts defense is better than Buffalo's defense. I would say that. I say the Colts running game is better overall than the Buffalo Bills running game, but Buffalo's offense is better than the Colts. So between those two teams, Anthony, who do you think has the best opportunity again to knock off the Chiefs?
Of the Colts and the Bills?
Yes.
A month ago, I might have said Indianapolis, but for some reason, this defense, that Indy defense has not looked good. You can pass on that secondary, and they are giving up a lot of points. And I like the offense for the Bills better, but I'm going to keep going back to the Colts because they have the better running game. Buffalo cannot run the football. Right. And I think that's going to ultimately hurt them in January because Jonathan Taylor, he's been hot in the second half. They actually have 2 really good running backs. And Phillip Rivers, he's done it before. Last year, Josh Allen, it was his first playoff game against the Texans, and it looked like he was a deer in the headlights after a really good really good regular season. It looked like the postseason game was too big for Josh Allen, and that's what I'm going to be looking for this year. Does he have that same look? Can he handle the pressure?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And one more question before we let you go. I'm really interested. Tua's had that safety net behind him, Fitzpatrick, right? So if he kind of is not playing well, he knows Fitzpatrick will come in, and the coach, of course, had that safety net too. Now, Fitzpatrick's out. He's not playing his COVID. It's all up to Tua. How do you think he'll perform in the spotlight, Anthony?
You say safety net, but on the other side of it, what if he was looking over his shoulder, knowing the coach has no issue pulling him? I think this could work in either way for Tua. Maybe now that he doesn't have to look behind his shoulder and see Ryan Fitzpatrick there, maybe he's playing a little bit looser with less pressure.
Good point. Good point. Anthony, again, thank you for coming on. We love having you on every Sunday for a pregame show. Folks, go over to Fantasy Football Face-Off. Check him out on Twitter. He has a great show over there. He has a great Twitter account over there, and we enjoy having him on. Very knowledgeable, great guest. Thank you again,
Happy
Anthony.
New Year, Anthony.
Happy New Year, guys.
So there you go, Jack. Anthony Cervino comes in and gives us a little fantasy and a little bit of football breakdown, as he does every week.
I didn't have a chance to really mention to him, for rookie quarterbacks in fantasy, the top three of all time were Cam Newton, RG3, and Justin Herbert. Now, everyone who's saying Justin Herbert's going to be a Hall of Famer for sure, look at the two guys ahead of him who lit it up as rookies in fantasy. Cam Newton has had a good career. Let's not take it away from him. A good long career. He was an MVP after that for 1 year. RG3 basically didn't work out after his rookie year. He's a backup. So there's no guarantee that Justin Herbert is on his way to the Hall of Fame, even though I do think he's going to have a great career.
Listen, Jack, it's a great point. We seem to get excited too soon and expect too much of a lot of players, especially at the quarterback position.
Yeah.
We know that's a very tough position to be consistently good at. So, Jack, we're going to take our official timeout right now, just before our great guest Robert Butler comes on. It's not Robert Palmer. Don't mess that up again, Jack. So we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with Sports Scope host Robert Butler, and we'll see you on the other side, guys. Stick with us. Great show coming.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma.
I love you too. Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samsung.gov. That's underagedrinking.samsung.gov. This message brought to you by Samsung and this station.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Info Line. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed. Yeah, well, Kyle's not here. How come? Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple nights ago. Really? Yeah. Zero tolerance. He's out for the season. Come on, it's the first offense, right? That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt, that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim? Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so. Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's gonna be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he gonna know? You think kids that age really listen? They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. More information about talking with kids about underage drinking. Visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Okay.
You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show, live Wednesday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. We're on our football show today where me and Jack break down the NFL games, and we bring in great guests to go over some of the stuff in football. We just had our fantasy football expert on, Anthony Cervino, who gave us a breakdown and gave us some fantasy plays. And as he said, it's a little hard, Jack, because a lot of teams are resting their players. And, it's hard to pick a fantasy guy. So he's just going with the teams, the players from the teams that are in the hunt for playoffs right now. And so it's always great having him on. And we have another great guest coming up called Robert Butler. Now, Robert Butler runs Sports Scope. There's a great show over there. He covers all sports. He's great with the NFL also. So that's why we bring him in all the time, Jack. And let's bring Robert up and see how he's doing today. How you doing?
Hey, morning, guys. Excited about the last week, man.
Yes.
Pretty anxious.
It was really, really a great week. It's a new year. Hopefully things get better around the country and we can really start getting back to normal and going to games and stuff like that.
Oh, man.
Yes. Robert, so, I watched the bowl games and the championships, and we've talked about this in the past shows about, it's not as fair as it should be to other teams, and that, we know pretty much in the beginning of the season who's going to end up in the championship, whether it's Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson. You can throw Notre Dame in there, or maybe another a top team from SEC or Georgia or something like that.
Yeah.
And I watched Notre Dame, and every year, Jack, and I'm a Notre Dame fan since I was a kid, since the days of Joe Theismann. That's how far back I go. And Notre Dame, because of its history and because of its popularity way back when, they had Notre Dame fans across the country because it's called the Fighting Irish, and it appeals to a culture. You don't hear of the Fighting Italians or anything like that.
Right.
But probably, make that team a very, very popular team. But Notre Dame recently with Jim Kelly, he's a good coach. He always puts together a solid team, but it's not a top tier team. Every year they get into the championship series, whether they play for the national title or they play in the championship series, they get destroyed. I mean, we're not talking, it's not even close. So what I'm asking you, looking at Notre Dame's history and their popularity, and it's supposed to be one of the greatest football programs in the history of college. Do you think Jim Kelly is the right person for that job?
Brian Kelly.
Brian Kelly, yeah.
Sure. Well, old Jim.
You said it twice, Max. So
Well, thank you.
Time I let it go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Because we don't want to confuse the quarterback of the Bills.
Yeah, he stepped down and been coaching secretly for Notre Dame for 20 years now. No, I think Brian Kelly, remember Notre Dame don't have the monopoly on the TV thing. Remember, had that exclusive TV. You've got a lot of TV deals now with the SEC, with all the ABC affiliates and everything. And so
Not to
Notre
mention
Dame,
ESPN too. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, so I just think if you look at their regional issues, their academic issues, I think Brian Kelly is probably the best they can do. Not unless you got a guy like a Urban Meyer, who's flirting with the NFL, talks maybe taking the Jacksonville job, perhaps, or maybe about somebody who's won a national championship. Other than that, I mean, I really like Brian Kelly. I like the players that he's putting out in the NFL. You look at Quentin Nelson, the guard that plays for the Colts. Will Fuller, I want to say, went to Notre Dame. So it seems like that's the best you can get. Don't be like a Tennessee and fire the guy and not have a really an upgrade, because upgrade from him would be probably somebody who's won a national championship or something of that nature. So I feel like they've probably hit their pinnacle post Lou Holtz. I mean, Lou Holtz, what is it, past 25 years since he's coached for that team. So I think that may be the best Notre Dame can do as of right now. I mean, they're in the playoff practically every year. It's just another level of play when you get to the Clemsons and the Alabamas of the world, Ohio State included.
Well, the reason I'm saying this again, and I'm going to piggyback this. I didn't talk to you about this before the show.
Yeah.
But Brian Kelly, to me, I mean, like I said, he's a good coach. I don't think he's up a top tier coach, and that does have to do recruiting. You're right, and the television covering almost every team. But then we turn to Jim Harbaugh, who was brought down to Michigan, and he was supposed to be the Super Bowl coach that was going to end up recruiting these great players from across the high school levels across the country, and he's done even worse, where his program has fallen off, where Ohio State routinely beats them. I think they beat him every time he's been there. And now he's losing to Michigan State, and he's getting a losing record. Again, Michigan, along with Notre Dame, in the history of college football, is one of the most winning organizations. They offered him an extension to continue to coach at Michigan. What do you think about that?
Yeah, Jim Harbaugh, I'm not really – I think they may feel like they may have hit their guy. As far as I think that they think that maybe Ron Day gets another job offer, that most of Ohio State was living off of this Urban Meyer thing going, and they feel like that Michigan is just – remember, they haven't won really they've won a lot of percentage of games. They've won, 2 national championships. One of them was 23, 25 years ago, 97. They split that, I want to say, with USC. So they're really not a dominant team like an Alabama who's won national championships with 3 coaches that I know of, maybe going back farther. So they're not really a dominant program historically when it comes to championships. They just want to, beat Ohio State every other year and win 9 to 10 wins. If you want to have a perspective going back 50, 60 years.
Let me tell you, the national championship game, Alabama and Ohio State, I hate to veer to the NFL, but when I'm watching that game, I'm watching Justin Fields very carefully, whether he's the Jets guy or not. I mean, obviously, I loved what I saw against Clemson as a Jet fan. And if he has another big game, something similar to that, how did the Jets not draft him at that point? Right. It's very intriguing, and of course, Alabama has some players that come into play as well, and so there's a lot of maneuvering for draft position. You could talk about the combines and the interviews all you want, but to me, it's what you put out on the field, and they should base that. And I notice too many of the NFL teams are drafting players highly who don't really have a big body of work, who really haven't had a lot of college games. So they're drafting basically based on potential rather than performance. But in a big game against Alabama, you take Justin Fields going against Alabama, that's the closest thing to an NFL team you're going to have, because they're going to they always turn out a bunch of good NFL players. So that game has a lot of interest to me outside of just being for the college national championship, but how it affects the NFL draft as well.
Right. Yeah. Trent Dilfer said, remember when he had his bad game, was it 3 weeks ago now, against Northwestern? And people were saying maybe he should just keep Sam Darnold. And Dilfer was saying, he's one of these quarterback guys. He said there's certain throws that he can make. Once you get to the workouts, these little sideline throws that guys like Lamar Jackson suffer with, and the fact that Fields is a mobile quarterback, he said he can make those throws. And I wouldn't just write him off. They said this about 3 weeks ago. Then he turned around and has this big game against Clemson. Yeah, you're right. If he does this against Alabama, even if they lose and he has a high rating, 3 to 4 touchdown, low interception, and shows that he's got a good football IQ here, that would put the Jets fans at ease of maybe even looking at that pick. And quite frankly, if you're a Jets fan, you want him to do that because it ups that trade value.
Right. I know Mac has told me on various occasions how much he likes Sam Darnold. He feels he has a lot of potential. So if it were up to Mac, the Jets would just stick with Sam Darnold and do whatever with the draft choice, either trade down or take someone else or whatever. But I kind of think back to how the Jets got Sam Darnold in the draft 3 years ago. The Jets were going number 6. And to move up 3 slots to the number 3 position, they flip-flopped their draft choice, number 3 and number 6, and gave the Indianapolis Colts 3 second-rounders. 3. Okay, to just move up 3 slots. Now, had they not done that, let's make believe the Jets stood pat at number 6. Chances are someone would have taken Sam Darnold before then. Maybe, maybe not. But let's say they did. Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson would have been there for them, okay, as it turned out. So sometimes it's best to just leave things alone and just pick where you're supposed to be and not force the issue.
Well, yeah, I mean, if they don't trade it, everybody's talking about this tackle, guys, from left tackle from Oregon. I know the fans and I was one of those fans, you don't get excited about a left tackle. But when those games are being played and this guy's got time to go through all of his reads, then that's a big difference. I think that's a big issue with Jared Goff. Without his left tackle, this guy's rated pretty high. Possibly do take this guy, move him to left, and then whoever's at your left tackle, move him to right. If he's that good, depends on what Joe Douglas thinks.
Well, they just picked up a left tackle last year. The Jets did. A rookie that they have starting there right now. So, I mean, I agree that the offensive line to me should be built before anything else. That's the way I go through football anyway. But there are some great running backs and receivers that the Jets could pick up in the second position too. If they don't pick up Fields or they don't trade their draft pick away to get more draft picks. I'm not sure. I know Jamal Adams has given them a slew of draft picks with that trade with Seattle. Maybe they stockpile draft picks by trading away their second pick. I do kind of like Fields. I think it would be not a bad pick for the Jets. And I do like a couple of the running backs and wide receivers at that slot too. So, I mean, at least they got options. You can say that about.
It's a good problem to have. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, definitely.
Guys, is there a chance of this happening? Because I heard before the rumors about Urban Meyer maybe being interested in the Jacksonville Jaguar job. And think of the connection, former Ohio State coach Justin Fields, Ohio State quarterback. Would the Jacksonville Jaguars conceivably, if Justin Fields has a great game he beats Alabama for the national championship and he's phenomenal, flip-flop with the Jets 1 and 2, if the Jets would give them a couple of more, the 2 of their later first-round draft choices that they got in the Adams trade. I mean, that's intriguing to think there's a small possibility that could be, and then the Jets would get Trevor Lawrence at number 2.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't put it out there. I mean, I wouldn't put it past. I mean, things like that have happened before. If one player says he don't want to play for one team, we saw that with Eli Manning. I'm still shocked by that Eli Manning.
No, it's a connection, Rob. I mean the Ohio State connection.
Yeah.
Of Urban Meyer and Justin.
Yeah,
Fields.
Urban used to coach there. He probably scouted this guy as a freshman Urban Meyer will make an impact. I think he'll have a Pete Carroll-like impact because he's scouted these guys as freshmen in high school. He's big on recruiting like Nick Saban was. Yeah. And he's the exact same age Nick Saban was when he took the job at Miami years ago, or at Alabama, when came back from Miami.
And with that point, Robert, let's not get too excited because a lot of college coaches cannot come up to the NFL and be successful. So we'll see what happens. It's a different breed of teaching at both levels. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about the position the Rams are in right now. Yeah. I mean, they have their quarterback that's starting, and we talked to Anthony about this before you came in. They got a quarterback that's never taken an NFL snap, and they're in the playoff hunt right now. And they pick up Bortles, who has played football, for years, and not a successful quarterback, but he has experience. I mean, how would the Rams approach this? Goff is out, which is, of course, their quarterback, who they think is going to carry them into the future. And the Rams were playing some solid ball this year. And, you're going against the Cardinals, who the defense is not the greatest, but they're improving every week. And now you got a quarterback that has never taken a snap. I mean, what would you do as a coach? Would you say, okay, listen, we got Bortles right now. I'm not giving him a chance. This quarterback that hasn't taken a snap, or do you go with the young man, and Bortles, his career, he doesn't do too well in big games. So what would you do being the head coach of the Rams right now?
Well, I looked at that guy's tape the other day and talked about it on my show. John Wolford, he's been in there. He played for the AAF back in February of 2019. Only one season. Guy's got a really quick release. He's athletic. He's more athletic than Jared Goff. Now, mind you, I'm calling for the Rams to upset these guys today, okay? Wolford, you've seen him you've seen his tape, and quite frankly, he's been in their system since 2019. So he knows the playbook. Apparently, Sean McVay's got a lot of faith in this guy. He may win this game. And they may be hesitant to put Goff in for the playoffs if they go on a playoff run. That's what I'm saying about Wolford.
Okay.
I mean, could be wrong. Could go in there and be a total disaster and it'd be over with. But
I don't think Goff would be available for the playoffs. I think his injury is severe enough to keep him out. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but that's my.
Okay. I know it's a thumb injury, and they're not really sure.
Yeah. I think he had operated on, and that's maybe why you can't play. That's the only reason. Now, there's two different philosophies in football when it comes to playoffs. Some coaches play their starters no matter if they've got it wrapped up or not to keep them fresh. The Patriots have done that over the years. You see some wild card teams that have to play every week and have to play every Sunday, and sometimes they are hot and they go to the playoffs and beat the teams that rest their players. And of course, there's the philosophy: I don't want to get my players hurt. I want to get rest. I want to get them healed up before they play. What do you think is the right philosophy with that, Rob?
Well, I know Bill Belichick used to do it every single time. He would play the starters as long as he possibly could. I think it came back and bit him one time. They lost the safety one year. But other than that, I mean, you look at the guy's record. You want these guys to be fresh. If it's an issue where I think possibly 1 week, but when you start getting into 2 weeks, 3 weeks, remember the Colts did it, and it came back and bit them. I remember it came back, what is it, 2004 or 2005 season where Steelers got hot. The Colts finally, once the Colts finally woke up, it was too late. They missed that field. You guys remember that? That was the Jerome Bennis for the guy. There was a story about a guy had a heart attack. Bennis fumbled the football or something like that. But they won that game. But it didn't take to the middle of the third quarter for them to get their timing back. So if you're an offensive team, you want to play as much as you can. I know Buffalo, that's a big issue with Buffalo today. And you're a young team, you want to play as much as you can. But if you're a team that relies on defense, it's a very dicey situation. I'm leaning towards play as much as you can because you're going to lose your rhythm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, you play fearful, man. You can get hurt anywhere. I mean,
Listen, Andy Reid is resting guys for the Chiefs, and they've locked up home field, and they have a bye next week.
Yeah.
So some of his guys aren't going to be in a tough game, competitive game for 3 weeks because they have to bye 1 week, and this week is basically an off week. I mean, they're playing the game, but they've just gone through the motions. So.
Right.
Yeah,
Last year they were down 24. Was it 24-0 in Houston? I guess Andy Reid feels like if we get off to a slow start, we've got the firepower to come back and win the game like we did last year.
Yeah,
So I guess it's just a feel from a team by team situation.
That's a good point.
Just think what happened to Houston since they've been up 24-0. Could you imagine you freeze that moment and say, this is what you're going to be doing from this moment on through next season? They wouldn't believe it. They'd blow the 24-0 lead and be at 4-11 for the next year.
And then no draft picks next year because Miami's got them.
You're right. Exactly.
And that might be the number 3 overall pick in the draft. Darn it. That might have value. And you want to know something? In Miami could flip that number 3 pick for a team that might want a quarterback. You never know.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Miami has set themselves up for success, not only on the field, but, in operations as far as the draft goes. I mean, they've done a heck of a job over there. Now, we have a situation in the Patriots that we haven't had in 20 years where they have to actually rebuild, not retool, Robert. And they need a quarterback. That's first and foremost. I mean, some of the players that were out because of COVID and injuries, they'll be back. I would imagine Belichick will get that defense back to where it was again. The special teams are normally solid. Cam Newton just doesn't have it for what I see. I mean, even when healthy, he can't throw the ball like he used to. He still can run with the ball, but that's great for a running back.
No weapons, Mac.
Right, I agree with that too. But I still think they need a quarterback who's accurate. Who may be able to make plays with his legs, but has a better arm. So there are some quarterbacks that are coming up that they have a chance at going after or are in situations on their team that aren't that great for them. So Trubisky was the first name to come to mind. They may slap a franchise tag on him, and he may end up staying with the Bears, but that's a possibility. Darnold with the draft coming up, as Jack says, they may take Field or another quarterback, and maybe Darnold's out of a job. You got Wentz who's in trouble in Philly right now. Hurts or Wentz, one of the other ones, depending on whether you want to keep the contract or you don't. And of course, you got Andy Dalton, who's played very well for the Dallas Cowboys with Prescott being out. So, which quarterback? If maybe I haven't mentioned one that you can think of.
Yeah.
Which quarterback, if you were the Patriots, would you go after aggressively?
Well, first of all, they are third in most money next year. I mean, this has been a rough year, but I tell you, Belichick has done a lot with the team with all those opt-outs, all those free agency losses. So they have a lot of money next year. And I mentioned before in this program, and I'll stick by it, what I've been reading, this Matt Stafford rumor, the new coach, there's a sense up there in Detroit would probably want to get a new quarterback. They went through 3 head coaches under Stafford. And, this guy's 32, 33 years old, strong arm, somewhat mobile, he's not a stick man back there. He needs a change of scenery. They've got the money to pay the guy, maybe take the remaining part of his contract. And I'm sure it's pretty modest, as we was talking about before, about those quarterback contracts that look like 25, 26 look like a lot of money. And a few years from now, even now, that's considered a bargain. There's a lot of guys in the 30s. Patrick Mahomes is going to be in the mid-40s. So I see a guy like Stafford, a lot of money, and I could see they could probably get him for a second or third round pick.
I don't think so. I think it would have to be a first round.
You think so?
Yeah, I do. I know he's had a lot of years in the league. I could see a team like the Denver Broncos, John Elway, really interested in Stafford, but whether they'd be willing to give up a somewhat high number 1 pick, I don't think quite for that. But maybe you're right. Maybe a second and a third next year, and a second round pick the year after that. three picks. Yeah, I could see what you're saying.
And I was reading the mock draft. CBS has them drafting Mac Jones out of Alabama with the 15th pick. They're going to be in the 15 to 17 range. Bill Belichick's good friends with Nick Saban. Nick Saban are telling the truth behind closed doors, whether it's all about our system and his wide receivers. One of them may win the Heisman. I think Devontae Smith may win the Heisman, the wide receiver from Alabama. And they've got another receiver that's it's considered a top 20 prospect according to these mock drafts. But if it's Mac Jones, maybe they take Mac Jones and just signed a veteran like a Fitzpatrick type of situation and see how it plays out from there. And possibly a wild card, go back and get Jimmy Garoppolo.
I'm going to say that.
Cal Shanahan, there's some thought maybe he may go after Matt Ryan because they worked together back in the Atlanta days. There's rumors of frustrations with Garoppolo being hurt 2 of the last 3 years. Maybe Belichick and his assistants feel like they can work with him. So those would be my key guys that they may look at with the connection.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that when you got done.
Trade back, wouldn't that be a first?
Yeah, I mean,
have him back,
Belichick wanted to keep Garoppolo, and there was talking he was trying to unload Brady before he won another Super Bowl or 2. So Belichick, we know, likes Garoppolo. He was willing to, until Robert Kraft put the kibosh on that, he was willing to keep Garoppolo and maybe let Brady go. They definitely need a couple receivers, as Jack said, a tight end, but they definitely, I think, number one on their list is to get a veteran quarterback over there that knows what he's doing, and maybe a younger one. I mean, maybe Wentz could go over there, and maybe if a different change of scenery might help him, but that's a big contract, and I don't know if the Patriots are willing to even pay half of that.
Guys, a new coach comes in for the Lions. What do you think of this deal? Even up Matthew Stafford for Sam Darnold, so the Jets could then use the number 2 pick on whatever else or trade down.
He loves the Jets, man. He loves
it. Well, the Jets have been looking good the last few weeks. They're the 2 games. They win today,
And let me tell you, the heat's going to come on Daniel Jones next year. Okay, next year, it's got to turn around. It's going to be his 3rd year in the league. Let's see what he does today. If he has a big game today and the Giants get into the playoffs, it's going to look very good for Daniel Jones moving forward. But if he has a poor game today, and I know he has the hamstring bothering him, but the heat's going to be on him next year for sure.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I was reading that. I heard that earlier this week. If the Giants lose, they may do away with Dave Gettleman.
He has not done a bad job. I don't understand why he's being made a scapegoat. I know the team's records have been poor, but his draft picks haven't been poor. He took Saquon Barkley, number 2, instead of Sam Darnold. That was a good move, actually, to take Saquon Barkley.
Well,
he didn't take Dwayne Haskins.
Yeah.
And all the pressure was on him to do that. He traded for Leonard Williams. They put him down for that in the beginning, and that's looking good. So I don't see why, he's getting unnecessary criticism.
It's New York, Jack. It's all about New York because if you can count Dexter Lawrence in there, you can count
Dexter
Hill.
Lawrence they drafted, and the Odell Beckham Jr. deal has been a good deal. Getting Dexter Lawrence with the pick, Jabril Peppers.
Getting rid of Odell was a great move. But I would have signed him before I did that, though. I think he listened, and then I wouldn't have drafted Barkley. But I mean, I know we talked about that before.
And if you want to mention also the Bradbury signing and the Ryan signing, I mean, those are some really good signings. But New York is a very tough place to live.
Yeah.
One more question for you, Robert, before I let you go. I know you're down there in Tennessee, around Tennessee anyway, and the Titans.
Nashville.
You kind of follow them, the Tennessee Titans. They have a shot at wrapping it up. They have to do a couple things have to happen. The Colts, between Colts and Tennessee, will end up, deciding who gets in and who doesn't. And there is a scenario where even if the Colts win, they still may not make the playoffs. What do you think about Tennessee? I mean, Tennessee has dropped off so far, maybe because they surprised us last year. We didn't think they were that good. Yeah. They turned out to be that good. and there was a lot of expectations of him this year. I don't know if it's just the defense with the poor pass rush and the poor secondary play that has ate you up this year, because we know you got the best running back in the league right now. There's no question about that. And Tannehill is definitely not a scrub. He's a solid quarterback.
Yeah.
So if Tennessee gets in and they get knocked out right away, it's going to kind of be a disappointment to a lot of fans because they did so well last year, even though they have another winning season and they're still competing, which fans should support that. But as Jack says, a lot of times it doesn't matter, if you went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago or not and won, the fans will turn against you in a minute. So,
Right.
What do you think about Tennessee? How do they retool if they get knocked out? Maybe they go on a winning streak. Who knows? What are they going to retool? Is it just their pass rushes? Is it secondary that they got to look at first, Robert?
Yeah, they're so bad. I think they're like dead last in sacks. They have like the worst pass rush. They spent $20 million. The Clowney thing, and then there was another guy they brought in from Atlanta, used to play with Atlanta. They cut him earlier this year. He was just a bad pick there. Between him and Clowney, and their run defense, they got rid of Jarrell Casey a year or two soon. Of course, he goes to Denver and gets hurt. It's nowhere near the level of defense they used to play. We saw that last week. Couldn't hardly move the ball. Green Bay, I was totally wrong about that game. They are not one of my teams I think is going to get to the Super Bowl this year. I thought maybe they can get to the AFC Championship game again this year. They probably need multiple pass rushers. They probably need about 4 or 5 extra defensive players and personnel. Plus, they don't really have a good defensive coordinator. Dean Pease retired. And now he's talking about coming back. He's the former Baltimore Ravens defensive coordinator. So I would probably move off of this guy or bring in somebody else to help on the defensive side, do like a Dallas Cowboy type of situation there and help that side of the ball out. Some of it is scheme, I would say. But there were parts last year that they played great defensively. Yeah. So maybe they bring Dean Pease back. Maybe they go out and get another defensive coordinator, and they're going to have to go heavy on the defensive side, like a Raider team, for example, because I think they're sold up. They're shored up on the offensive side. You got Henry for a few more years. You got Tannehill for 3 or 4 more years. You got a fairly decent offensive line. You'll get your left tackle back. So it's a lot of reason for optimism. I'd expect them to win the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah. It's as I say, fans have a very short memory.
Right.
Of how good they are, And I mean, listen, Tennessee, as I said, they're fighting for the playoffs, which, most of the teams are not doing that right now, no matter how porous their defense has played this year. So, Robert, again, we thank you for coming in. We enjoy having you on. Robert's show is part of the Northeast Streaming Sports Network, too. Check him out at Sportscope. He does a great job. Have you been having technical problems with your Facebook
Yeah,
page?
I couldn't get the video working the other day. Sometimes we've had some streaming. I don't know. Maybe it's because of that explosion we've had down here. We've all had cable. I don't have AT&T, but everybody's had AT&T. But I have Comcast, Xfinity. Not to get too much, but that was a national story, Jack. I mean, everybody, it was a major explosion down here. And we're still trying to get things figured out technically. And some of the networks are converging to help each other out and have more people. So I'm just glad I'm on today.
Yes. and I know
I'm glad I don't have AT&T. But
you are
crazy. Who's winning the NFC East?
Who's winning the East? Okay, Washington. I read Alex Smith is going to be there. He's coming back today. Antonio Gibson's going to be back, and Terry McLaurin is going to play today. Going to be a very tight game. Alex Smith may re-injure himself, and then if all that happens, Ron Rivera's got to get Coach of the Year.
Giants or Cowboys? Who's going to be?
I like the Cowboys to win this game.
I knew you would. Hey, listen.
The Giants have scored 13 points in the last 3 games on an average.
I know.
And Max says stick with Daniel Jones. Keep sticking with him, Max.
I'm telling you, Dave Gettleman, you got to move away off of him.
Yeah,
I'm
wait,
just
wait,
kidding, man.
until you're next week and the Giants are in the playoffs. Both of y'all laugh at both of you. So anyway, again, Robert, thank you for coming in. We appreciate your insight and knowledge. I know you're still doing the podcast on Spotify, if I'm correct. So, folks,
well, everywhere you get your podcast, Apple.
So folks, if you can't, he shares that to Northeast Sports, streaming sports. So check out his podcast. Check out his videos when he gets it up, and hopefully it's going again. Great show, great insight. Thanks again for coming in, Robert.
All right, guys, enjoy the games.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Yes, sir. So, Jack, the great Robert Butler comes in and gives us a lot of information and his thoughts on a lot of different things, and we enjoy having him in all the time. So, Jack, our last break for the show and the last break for the regular.
Looking forward to this break, Mac. I mean,
Okay.
it's like a player who thinks he's getting a little break and the game's continuing, and
Yes,
I'll be all refreshed after that break.
And we'll come back.
Like a bye week, a bye minute.
We'll come back, folks, and we'll give you. We'll do what we get paid a lot to do, and that's break down the games and all the local teams. So we'll be right back after these messages, folks. Please stick with us.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting the stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again?
Alex is just
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking to kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed. Yeah, well, Kyle's not here. How come? Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. 0 points. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's the first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt, that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Okay.
You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. We're on live Wednesday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m., and I'm your host with your co-host, Jack Hirsch. And, Jack, we've had a great show so far, and I want to get a couple things out of the way before we proceed with our breakdown of the games. Talk about our website at macandjacksports.com, where we have our three sponsors, really, Z Catering, that will cater all your needs from the big parties to the small parties. They have 5 different restaurants that they have 5 top line chefs, and they'll go ahead and set you up for any kind of personal parties, from weddings all the way down to graduations and birthday parties. We also have at our website at macandjacksports.com Fanatics, which is a great shop. It has all the NFL, MLB, NBA, NHL teams and all their apparel and wear, and PSTBreakers.com, Jack, who have autographed, signatured jerseys, and they also have some of the best cards and memorabilia in the country. And if you put the Mac Jack code in, MACJACK, you'll get $10 off their already low prices, Jack. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get to our breakdown of the games, and we're going to start it off, Jack, with Tampa Bay at Atlanta. Tampa Bay has already got their playoff position. They're already in. Atlanta is still kind of just wavering out there. Some games they seem to look really good. Some games they end up losing at the end or getting beat pretty badly. So what do you think about this game? Do they rest Brady and some of their players?
I know Atlanta's going to be playing very hard, and they're going to be playing to win. Raheem Morris, I mean, there's no reason to rest players. I mean, because they're out of it. They have a 4-11 record. But he took over as the interim coach when they were 0-5, and he's went 4-6. 4-6 isn't a good record. But if you're 0-5 and he wins today, they upset Tampa Bay, and his coaching record is 5-6. It puts him in the mix as far as being interviewed for the job. He claims he's been interviewed all along in meetings with the owner throughout the year and so on. So that'll be interesting how it'll play out with the Falcons, who've blown a number of games they should have won. For Tampa Bay, time's running out. Have they peaked? They look really good in their last game. They have the great individual pieces, but at 10-5, if they slip up and they lose at home to Atlanta, and they're going into the playoffs at 10-6, they're not exactly going in good form at all. So it's imperative that Tampa Bay wins today, looks good, and is ready to make that big playoff push.
So in your opinion, they're not going to rest
Tampa Bay. With that said, I think Tampa Bay gets it done. I think it'll be a close game, like what most Atlanta games are. But Tampa Bay, they have more upside, arguably, than any other team in the NFC as far as what they can do going forward, because they have all these great weapons, on offense.
They sure
and a good defense, too.
Yeah, they just got to get some kind of continuity in there, and if they do that, they're going to be trouble in the playoffs. We got Cincinnati getting a lot of points against Baltimore, Jack. Baltimore is still fighting for their playoff lives. Cincinnati has played really well of late, surprisingly, without Burrows. They've been a team that takes advantage of a lot of turnovers, and they've been playing very well. So does Baltimore just destroy Cincinnati, or does Cincinnati?
I think they do. I think Baltimore wins easy. The Ravens win easy. I'll tell you, the Ravens at 10-5 now finally got it together. They hit a bad patch, but they've got it together, and they're really deep at the cornerback position. It's so hard to throw on the Ravens. We keep talking about Lamar Jackson at quarterback. but we don't talk much about the Raven defense. They just signed one of their cornerbacks, Jimmy Smith, to a 1-year extension. And signing anyone to an extension this late in the season is kind of highly unusual. But the Ravens in good form on both sides of the ball, and we can't dismiss them as a Super Bowl threat. And they should beat the Bengals, pretty handily by about 20 points, I think.
I tend to agree with that, Jack. Detroit is underdog against Minnesota. Stafford is playing. Minnesota's been a huge disappointment this year. There are a lot of people picking. A lot of odds makers are picking Detroit with the points or maybe win because of Minnesota's defense. I wouldn't go that far. I think Minnesota beats Detroit, Jack. But even if they do, disappointing.
Mac, it's funny. You nearly made me laugh when you said a lot of odds makers are picking this game. It's the who cares game of the week.
Right.
Who cares? The Vikings at 6-9 against the Lions at 5-10. Both teams have underachieved. The Vikings at least have stability in the coaching position. With Mike Zimmer, they have a good year, an off year, good year, an off year since he's been with them. But he's shown in the past that he could win with the Vikings. And, of course, the Lions made the coaching change from Matt Patricia to an interim coach, Darren Pavel. And who knows who's going to coach the Lions next year. But I'm going to tell you, that's not that appealing a job. I know they have a high-profile quarterback in Matthew Stafford, but he's not exactly like a young ace that someone like an Urban Meyer is going to want to go to, that franchise. Yeah. And they have problems, going forward with the Lions as well.
That's one of the biggest mysteries to me, Jack. I mean, Detroit way back in the 60s, they did play some decent football. I think they beat Green Bay in one of their when Lombardi was there and beat him pretty soundly. And it seems like Detroit can't get it together. I don't know why. I mean, talk about the Cleveland Browns. I mean, Detroit has been, almost pathetic their whole existence over there. I mean, they've had great players with Sanders and Megatron and now with Stafford. But that organization, I don't get that organization at all.
That organization has never been to a Super Bowl.
Right.
The Cleveland Browns have never been to a Super Bowl, but they came very close a couple of years where they lost to Denver. And at least, they're on the right track, at the moment. But the Lions, I mean, year after year after year, they actually, when they had Jim Caldwell as their head coach, and he took them to a couple of 9-7 seasons, they got rid of him because they figured, he can't take them any further. Now, they would love to just get back to where they were now.
Very true.
Maybe hire Jim Caldwell as their coach. Go to him, see him, say, honey, I'm sorry, come back. Come back to me, and I'll be faithful to you. You could do what you want as the head coach. And,
Yeah, that's pretty true. Pittsburgh at Cleveland. We talked about this with Anthony. I don't know. With Roethlisberger not starting, I said, well, Cleveland's going to win this game. But with all the COVID over there and injuries in Cleveland, and you're going to have to depend on that running game, I would imagine, too. And Pittsburgh's got a good defense. I mean, this is going to be a real close game, Jack. I don't know who wins it.
Mac, not only is Mike Tomlin resting a bunch of players, they're not even making the trip to Cleveland.
Right.
Okay. So if the Browns lose this game to a Pittsburgh Steelers team that's basically saying, go out here, take it.
Right.
They can't take this game. They're going to have a hard time living it down. They could talk about COVID all they want and injuries, COVID, so on. Cleveland Brown fans are just going to remember they didn't make the playoffs. If they lose this game, they would have been at 10-6, and the record would have been satisfying. But to have a playoff position appeared to be locked up a couple of weeks ago and let it slip away, it's going to leave a bad taste, in people's mouth. They basically have to nail this down. I hate to use a relief pitcher term, but here we are in the 9th inning. They're 2 outs. Nail it down, get the last out, beat the Steelers, get in the playoffs. And even if Cleveland gets knocked out of the playoffs immediately in the first game, at least then they could say the season's successful. But to lose this game to a Steelers team that's basically handing them the game by not playing a bunch of guys, that's unacceptable.
Agree. San Francisco's at Seattle. San Fran, it's a division game. They play their division opponents really tough. Seattle with Wilson. I don't know. Seattle's wrapped it up too. I don't know if they're going to rest any of their players, but Seattle should win this game. I would say, Jack.
Yeah, Hyde, their good running back of Seattle, is out. Rashid Penny, as a running back for Seattle, is going to get a lot of play, and Pete Carroll's expecting good things from him. For the playoffs, their tight end, Greg Olsen, who Russell Wilson loves throwing to, chances are he's going to be back for that. And with the 49ers, they're only 6-9, but there's a lot of talent still on their team. It wouldn't shock me if they sprung an upset for this game over Seattle, who's clinched their playoff spot. And really, I don't think it's going to be that motivated. And the talk with the 49ers now is who's going to quarterback next year. I mean, Beathard quarterback for them last week. He threw 3 touchdown passes to lead the 49ers to a, surprise win over Arizona. If he should have another good game today, there's going to be a little bit of a quarterback controversy in San Francisco.
Yeah, I think there already is, Jack. Chicago and Green Bay, we went over with Anthony. Chicago is underdog to Green Bay. Green Bay still playing for the first seed. They would love to have teams come to Green Bay and play them there. Chicago has a chance with a win to get in the playoffs. What a game that would be if Chicago wins. I don't think it's going to happen, Jack.
Well, you've said, Mac, on the past, and it's a valid point. Sometimes a quarterback's only as good as his protection. And the Packer left quarterback, David Bakhtiari, is out for the year.
Yeah,
their left tackle. And Aaron Rodgers liked him a lot.
Yeah.
Figured he was a key guy to their blocking scheme. And Packers still need this game for home field advantage. And the Bears needed to make the playoffs. If I'm a Green Bay Packer player, I'm highly motivated because if you let home field advantage slip away, that means you lose the bye. That means you've got to play one extra game to get to the Super Bowl. So instead of winning 2 games to get to the Super Bowl, 2 games that are going to be in Green Bay,
right?
You have to win 3 games in a row to get to the Super Bowl, and one of them might not be in Green Bay. So you better win this game, and I think the Packers should take care of business against an inconsistent Bear team.
I agree, and I don't think if I was a Packer player, I'd want to go to Seattle or New Orleans to play for a championship game there.
Right, exactly. Yeah. It's a big one for Green Bay.
I agree. The Colts should beat the Jacksonville Jags, even though the Jags play pretty competitive every week. I don't see why the Colts shouldn't beat the Jags.
Wouldn't it be funny if the Jaguars showed up and they trounced the Colts in Indianapolis and all the conspiracy theories are going to say, you see, this game didn't mean anything to him because they have the number 1 choice all locked up, and now they're playing hard. We know that's not the case. Jacksonville has lost a lot of close games this year. They could have won a few of those games. But with that said and done, the Colts are clearly the better team. And the Colts should win this game quite decisively.
Definitely. KC resting their players, playing Carolina. Carolina.
No. Kansas City's playing the
Chargers. Playing the Chargers. And the Chargers with their exciting young quarterback. Kansas City resting their players. Maybe the Chargers win this one.
Well, the Chiefs have home field advantage locked up.
Right.
Chargers on a little bit of a roll. They've won their last 3 under Justin Herbert's playing great. I see the Chargers winning this game because it means nothing to KC. And they'll be ending the season on a high note, having won their last few in a row. And there'll be a lot to look forward to next year with the Chargers, with Justin Herbert. My feeling is they're going to keep Anthony Lynn as the head coach. A strong finish winds up saving his job. And for the Chiefs, as long as no one gets hurt, that's the whole thing. If it were up to the Chiefs, they wouldn't even play today.
I agree.
They wouldn't even play. I mean, they don't even feel. I don't know how it feels. I was never a player, in the NFL. But there has to be some games once in a while you just don't feel like playing. because
Okay.
there's nothing at stake. Nothing good could come of it. And what do they care? They're 14-2 or 15-1 to end the season. As long as they have home field advantage and they want to be ready for the playoffs. So I see the Chargers, going
Winning.
into Kansas City and winning.
So just give me your picks real quick, Jack, so we can get to the locals. We've got Carolina and New Orleans with no running backs, Jack.
I'll go with Carolina to upset New Orleans because my feeling is very quickly New Orleans is going to feel that Green Bay is going to win tonight anyway, so I don't feel there'll be that urgency. I go with Carolina on an upset.
Both are underdog pick for this week. Houston at Tennessee, Jack. Does Deshaun Watson light him up?
I think he does. I think Deshaun Watson has been having a good year, but because Houston has been so bad and so dysfunctional, people haven't noticed Deshaun Watson's having a good, year, and they'll upset the Titans today, I feel.
You got Arizona at the Rams. We talked about that. The Rams with a quarterback that never took a snap against a beat-up Arizona team. Who do you like there, Jack?
I picked the Rams in the beginning of the year to lose to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, so I'm obligated to stick with them. They'll find a way to win it. Late field goal, Rams find a way to upset the Cardinals. Kyler Murray hasn't been himself, it seems, a little bit. He's had a problem with the shoulder. Something's missing there, even though he's been playing.
Agree. Another who cares game, Jack. Denver at the Raiders. The Raiders looked really good in the beginning of the year and not so good now, and Denver hasn't looked really that good at all. So who do
The
you got?
Raiders are 7-8. So that's meaningful. You want to finish 8-8. It looks a lot better than 7-9, 8-8. So I'll go with the Raiders to beat Denver.
So now in our locals, Jack, we'll start off with the Giants in Dallas. That's the first game. Dallas offense seems to be clicking a little bit. The Giants do have a good defense. I say it comes down to whether the Giants can score or not this week. If the Giants can score, they can beat Dallas. If they can't, Dallas easy.
I tell you, I don't have much faith in the Giant offense. I know Jason Garrett, who used to coach the Cowboys for a lot of years. No one knows the Cowboys as well as he does, even though the Cowboys are changing certain schemes. Bottom line is Jason Garrett does know the Cowboy personnel. He does know strengths and weaknesses of the players, and that'll help him to an extent. Daniel Jones has the bad hamstring. He's saying it's limiting his mobility. Whether that's true or not, who knows? But the Giant offense has all of a sudden become stagnant, and the Cowboy weapons are showing up. I mean, I trust Andy Dalton more than Daniel Jones. As far as the quarterbacks go, I trust the Cowboy weapons more. The Giant, the Cowboy defense is stabilized too under Randy Gregory. Is getting a lot of pressure on the quarterback. So I'm going to go with the Cowboys. Yeah, I think it'll be a tough game. Let's call the Cowboys 20-13. How's that?
Yeah, you figure the Dallas won on that last pass from Dalton, and I'm thinking it was to Gallup, if I'm not mistaken, for that.
Well, but Dallas is playing better at the moment.
Yeah.
They were awful a good part of the year, and now they're like, they're quite average now. They're not awful. But the Giants have slid backwards. Since the Giants had that great game where their defense really rose up and they beat Seattle in Seattle, we were, wow, the Giants are peaking there. We thought they were going to win the NFC East.
Right.
And all of a sudden the next week they barely got by the Bengals, and then they went on this losing streak.
They're going to need their defense to come up huge and strong to win it if they're going to win
The
this
5-10 New York Giants are battling today for the NFC East is on the line. The 5-10. That means they've lost 2 out of every 3 games they've played. They've lost 2, and they're battling for the NFC East title.
And they still have a better record than last year, Jack. The New York Jets at the New England Patriots is a very interesting game to me. Bill Belichick is a very proudful coach. I would imagine have the Patriots ready as they can be. The Jets are playing very decent ball right now. It looks like their offensive receivers are back. Sam Darnold has some weapons to throw to now, and the defense is playing pretty good ball, Jack. I think, and I'm going on a limb here because I love Bill Belichick. I loved him since he was a defensive coordinator for the Giants and moved on. I still think the Jets are going to win this one, Jack.
Mac, in all honesty, as a Jet fan, I want the Jets to win, but it's a who cares game. Let's be honest about it. If the Jets win, they're 3-13 on the year. They would have won their last three, but they're not sticking with Adam Gase as the head coach.
Right.
Last year, Adam Gase finished the season, the second half, 6-2 after going 1-7. The Jets are going to move on one way or another. And for Bill Belichick, big decisions for next year. He has a veteran team. I don't think it's rebooting. I think it's rebuilding.
Yeah.
That's my thought. And there's this little school of thought too. Maybe Bill Belichick doesn't come back as coach next year. But
I don't know if he.
But I got to believe he will, because he's going to still have full control of the Patriot organization, and I'm sure it bothers him, all this talk. Well, without Tom Brady, you're not the same. The Patriots were declining anyway. Last year with Tom Brady, they finished the regular season, the second half, with a 4-4 record, and then lost the playoff game. So they lost 5 of their last 9 with Brady.
I agree with you 100%, Jack.
I think the Patriots win the game today, but it's one of those games where.
Well, it's going to be important to the.
Instead, I'm misquarterbacking.
It's going to be important. It's going to be important to the Jet and Patriot rivalry, the fans, who wins this last game. If the Jets win, the New York Jet fans, no matter their record, are going to be very excited about beating New England Patriots. And again, I think Bill Belichick, being as prideful he is, and he is one of the greatest coaches ever to play football, ever to coach football, rather. It means a lot to him not to lose to the
Mac,
Jets.
I think this is like a flurry at the end of a round with Sam Darnold. If Sam Darnold throws 4 touchdown passes for 450 yards on the day and the Jets win and he looks great, people are going to say, wow, Sam has really shown his potential. But if Sam Darnold should throw 3 interceptions and the Jet loss, okay, then people are going to say, we got to move on from him. So I think this is a last impression thing. It shouldn't come down to this. But it could tip the scales one way or another, because I don't know whether the Jet front office, Joe Douglas or whatever, they're sure whether they want to draft a quarterback or not. They want to see how Sam Darnold looks. They want to see how Justin Fields looks. They want to scout the BYU quarterback, Zach Wilson, maybe study him a little more. So I don't think the Jets quite know the direction they're headed in with the quarterback situation. So they have a chance, Sam Darnold, to make a last impression.
I agree, Jack. And like I said, to both fan bases, I think Belichick will be back next year. I don't think he'll want to go out as a head coach.
No, he'll coach somewhere. He would coach somewhere else if he left New England. But I think he's staying.
Yeah, either that or he's tired of coaching and moves up to be a GM somewhere, whether it's with another team or the Patriots, which he currently is anyway. So, Jack, the big game tonight was flexed in because of the playoff implications of Washington versus Philadelphia. Now, everybody's saying Washington is going to beat Philadelphia. Alex Smith is supposed to be playing. He didn't take hardly any snaps this week. Of course, he's injured. If he does play, I think he'll be limited. If Philly comes to play with their defense, which they still can play a defense, and they do run the ball, I think Philly has a good chance to beat Washington, because we know Washington is great against the pass. Having Hurts there now gives a little new dynamic too. I mean, he's going to run away from the rush. He's going to throw people all open. You got, whether you like the guy or not, Jackson's back. He can burn you deep. Washington's defensive secondary is not the best. I think the Eagles can beat Washington, Jack. It may be wishful thinking on my part too, but I think Philly has a really good shot at beating Washington.
Well, Washington, come on, they're 6-9. Of course they're beatable. 6-9. They lost to Carolina last week.
Right.
I mean, with Alex Smith at quarterback, we don't know whether he's going to play for sure. He's questionable. Usually when they say a guy's questionable, he's going to get in and play. I mean, I'll look for Washington if Alex Smith is in there and he's relatively healthy to pull it out. I think it's going to be a close game. It's going to be interesting to see if Carson Wentz finds his way back in this game one way or the other. Whether Doug Peterson late in the game, if Jalen Hurts isn't moving the team, whether he tries to give him a spark with Carson Wentz. Because Doug Peterson might say, just the heck with it. I might not be back next year myself. I'll just do what I want. it's going to be interesting viewing. I'll be surprised if it's not a close game. I'll go with Washington, but I could see Philly winning as well.
Yeah, I guess Schwartz, from what I understand, it may be out the door after this season. Jack Schwartz, the defensive coach of Philadelphia. And Jack, that is our final football show for the regular season. So next week we'll be getting into the playoffs, talking about that more in depth. Of course, the NBA will be coming slowly back into the show, more prevalent, and the NHL when it starts up. Maybe we'll have a big Super Bowl show at the end of the year with all our guests. That would be great. We'll see what we can do with that. So, guys, thanks for tuning in to our Sunday show. We'll be back again Wednesday at 8 to 10 a.m. live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And you can also see us at Northeast Sports Network page or the Mac and Jack, our Mac's Sports Facebook page. So check us out there. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for sharing the season with us. And we'll be back with a new season of the playoffs, Jack, starting Wednesday. You have a great day and enjoy the games today, Jack.
We'll have a lot to talk about next show.
Yes, we will, Jack. Have a great day.